First off, the Asian water crisis is exactly what it sounds like, a water shortage throughout the Asian continent. Water scarcity seriously threatens the economies of Asian nations, including Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, India, and Nepal. You're probably thinking right now that Asia has some of the largest rivers and water bodies. They cannot possibly be without water. Well, as you continue to observe, the entire issue will dramatically come into focus for you. 90% of the world's rice is produced in Asia, making it one of the greatest food producers in the world. Yet, to meet demand, they would need to produce at least 50% more rice than they do now, as the world population is anticipated to surpass 8 billion by 2030. Asia's main food-producing regions have recently experienced several problems. Devastating heat waves and flames have struck Russia. Thailand has had a severe drought, and flooding has affected Pakistan and China. Due to the 63 million megatons of grain lost from the global grain market, many of these nations are banning the export of grain and rice to feed their populations. This has a combined effect on the global price and availability of rice and grains, causing grain prices to soar. Given that Asia is currently home to more than half of the world's hungry people, it could pose a serious problem. If their supplies run out, the cost of importing food from other places will be too great for the most vulnerable and impoverished populations to bear. Throughout the numerous miles of the Asian coastline, climate change has contributed to rising sea levels, with the Mekong Delta seeing the most obvious effects. Due to a severe drought, the Mekong River is now at its lowest level in more than 50 years. The fact that rice is solely a freshwater crop has increased the salt concentration in the river, making tens of thousands of hectares of farmland vulnerable to damage. Finding sufficient freshwater supplies for crops and human consumption in Asia takes time and effort. Between 24 and 30% of the freshwater resources in the world are currently used for rice production. 3,000 liters of water are normally needed to cultivate 1 kilogram of rice. However, only half of that amount is absorbed by the plant. Farmers have cleared forests to use the area for farming due to demand to boost crop production for financial gain and to prevent food insecurity. Without the forest to hold the soil in place, heavy rains during the wet season cause significant erosion, further leaching the soil of nutrients and sending massive amounts of sediment down streams, rivers, and lakes. This soil is nutrient deficient in many places. Food scarcity has also been exacerbated by the growing use of pesticides and fertilizers, which have contaminated fresh water and made the local fish populations unhealthy to eat. Here, getting to the water is very literal. These two ideas are the foundations for analyzing Asia's water crisis. Environmental or physical factors may have a greater impact on water availability. Here, we're discussing topics like a country's geography or climate change concerning water access. Social or political issues can influence its alternative access. In this case, we're talking about how much a country's agricultural economy depends on irrigation and how well its municipal water supply functions. So, how can we know whether there is a water crisis? Indeed, the question should reflect the availability problem instead of the access one. Is there a problem with water access or water availability in the region? Is there a problem with rainfall in Asia, or is there a problem with access to fresh water? We need to realize that water shortages have geopolitical repercussions. Let's examine that in more detail. The area will inevitably conflict due to the region's water shortage. Most disputes between states over fresh water are because multiple Asian countries share the same water sources. Conflicts fueled by resources are unlikely to turn violent. As a result, the tensions may have long-lasting and destabilizing implications for the region's security and the world. Let's look at it. Two such instances will be used to highlight this. For several years, India and Bangladesh have traded scathing charges regarding shared river resources. When the Ganges River flows in the dry season dropped to dangerously low levels and Bangladesh suffered crop losses, tensions between India and Bangladesh erupted. In a later speech to the UN in October 1995, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh referred to India's diversion of river water close to the border as a serious injustice and violation of human rights. The construction of the Farrakhan barrage in India on the Ganges River close to the Bangladeshi border has also caused conflict and discord between the two nations. India built the barrage to move water away from the Calcutta port, but Bangladesh claims that the diversion has caused its water tables to drop and its downstream water to become more salinized. Consequently, this situation has generated significant strains and rifts in international relations between the nations. Much like any other international issue, each nation has a unique viewpoint. making reaching a consensus challenging. As a compromise, the two nations signed the pact on sharing the Ganges water in 1996. Although there has been a fair amount of peace between the two countries since the treaty was signed, Bangladesh continues to express its concerns. We all worry that although the dispute may have begun as a water issue, it could quickly become something else regarding international relations. This is just one instance, but there are ongoing conflicts related to water issues across the area. Regarding the sharing of water resources, India and China have encountered several problems. This has raised tensions between the two countries even more. If the Asian region's water crisis continues, things can swiftly become something else. The increase in resource use in Asia and the Pacific region between 1970 and 2005 was above the world average. This economic growth resulted in the region's reliance on fossil fuel sources. Countries in Asia and the Pacific region accounted for almost half of the world's CO2 emissions in 2008. The security of water, food, and energy sources in the region have also been comprised in parallel with decades of economic development. The fastest increase in water demand in Asia is now coming from the industry and urban households, not agriculture. About 4.7 billion people live in this region, struggling to meet water demands. Yet, using the word struggling is being generous to the situation. There's a crisis in Asia influenced by many things we've discussed. How seriously the region's leaders will address these challenges remains to be seen. Nonetheless, there's no doubt that lives and livelihoods are in danger. We cannot afford to let this situation continue unchecked. Asia needs to carefully examine how it uses its water resources if it hopes to feed its people while still being able to sell goods to the rest of the world. So what can be done now that water resources are on the verge of being obliterated from the continent? We'd like to have your suggestions in the comments section. If you like this video, give a thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this.